Now on page 192, I want you to work on the following questions. Actually, these are pages 192, 193, and 194. At the top of page 192, write down these problem numbers so that you know which ones you need to work. They are going to be numbers 4 through 15. That's on 192 and 193. And then on page 194, you're going to complete numbers 17, 18, and 20. So you're welcome to work ahead. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing these one problem at a time and uncovering the work and the answer. So as you finish with them, you might want to come back and check each answer before going on to the next question to make sure that you're solving them correctly. If you have problems, go ahead and circle that question or put a little star or a question mark next to it so that you know to ask about that answer. Make sure that you show your work next to each problem or with each problem so that you know how those answers came about. Start with number 4. Number 4 says, a tank containing 35 gallons of water is leaking at a rate of 1/4 gallon per minute. And I'm underlining the word leaking there because that gives us a clue to the operation. Write an expression to determine the number of gallons left in the tank after m minutes. So the 1/4 is going to be tied into the minutes here. Now, the important piece in this question is that we know that the tank starts with 35 gallons and that water is leaking out. Leaking means that it's draining, it's removing from that tank. So we know we're going to be subtracting there. Now, the question is, how much are we subtracting? Well, we're subtracting 1/4 of a gallon per minute. So we know that we're going to be multiplying that 1/4 of a gallon times the number of minutes. So there's my expression. Now I don't have to do anything with it because I don't know what m is. I don't know how many minutes it's been leaking. This is just the expression that I could use to determine how much water is left in the tank. Number 5. Write an algebraic expression that Marshall can use to determine the total cost of buying a watermelon that weighs W pounds and some tomatoes that weigh T pounds. How much will it cost to buy a watermelon that weighs 18.5 pounds and 5 pounds of tomatoes? So first thing that we need to do is write the expression that represents this situation. We know that we have a cost for each type of produce that we're buying, and we know that we have a number of pounds that we're going to be purchasing. So the first thing that we need to do is determine the expression that we're going to use using the cost and the variable that represents the number of pounds purchased. So here's that expression. Then we're going to evaluate or solve that expression for 18.5 pounds of watermelon and 5 pounds of tomatoes. So we're going to substitute into our problem 18.5 for W and 5 for T. Don't forget that you need to multiply first, and then you add those two prices back together. So the cost of the 18.5 pound watermelon will be $12.58, and the cost of 5 pounds of tomatoes will be $16.25. And that makes the total cost $28.83. Questions 6 and 7 are evaluating the expression using the value that you are given for the variable. So in number 6, we have 3/8 x minus 4 5/10, when x equals 4/10. So one thing that we can do is change that 3/8 into a decimal. And that is 3 divided by 8, which equals 375 thousandths. Then we're going to substitute in to our equation, or our expression rather, the 4/10 for x. And we have to multiply first, so we multiply that 375 thousandths times your 4/10, and you get 15 hundredths. And when I do 15 hundredths, take away 4 and 5/10, I get a negative 4 and 35 hundredths. For number 7, we have 8 and 4/10 n minus 3 and 2/10 p when n equals 2 and p equals 4. So we're going to first substitute in for the variables. N is 2 and p is 4. Now the order of operations tells us that we must multiply first before we subtract. So the first multiplication gives us 16 and 8/10, and the second multiplication gives us 12 and 8/10. And when we subtract those, we get 4. I'd like for you to try questions 8 through 15 on your own. Again, you may come back to the video and check them one at a time. And then I will reveal answers to these before we go on to the last page in those last 3 questions. Number 8. Number 9. Number 10. Number 11. Number 12. Number 13. Number 14. There's a lot of work with number 14 that you need to have written down. So please make sure you have all of those steps on your paper. And number 15. There are just 3 questions left. I want you to try these 3 questions and again come back and check your answers one at a time. Make sure that you have all of your work on your paper before you go on to the next part. Here's number 17. There's number 18. And last but not least, number 20. Don't forget, part A is where you write the expression, and in part B, you are solving for the value of those variables. Once you've finished checking or correcting your work for all those questions between pages 192 and 194, then you are ready to go on to your assignment for today. Please check with me if you have any questions.